So when we walked out of the room, my co-founder and I thought we crushed it with the government official. What turned out happening is that we got back channel from one of our folks that said, that person thought that you guys are not ready for prime time. And that crushed us.
Hey, welcome back to Founder Real Talk. I'm your host, Josh Broward, CEO of Wisdom Partners, the group putting this on. And today our guest is August Sun-Chen, and I'm so glad to have him on. We were just talking about one reason, the biggest reason why we do this podcast is founders feel lonely and they feel like they're the only ones making mistakes. And it's not true. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody is struggling. And we want to normalize the struggle and help each other by talking about the stuff that doesn't usually get talked about. In some ways, say the quiet part out loud. So I'm so excited to have August here. He's the founder and CEO of Hazel, which is an AI-powered procurement platform targeting the $2 trillion government purchasing industry, helping them become more efficient and reduce red tape and all of the things that that startups who serve the government dread. The very, very, very long sales cycles, the very, very, very long payment cycles, all of that kind of stuff. So without further ado, August, welcome.
Josh, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit more. I did my best high-level take on what Hazel does, but give us an insider scoop on specifically what problem are you solving?
Yeah, thanks for teeing it up. And honestly, again, in a nutshell, government procurement is a $2 trillion industry that involves governments and how they decide that they want to be able to buy literally any goods or service, from toilet paper to trucks to software vendors to consultants to anything in the DoD. And it's surprising to have to explore exactly how similar it is across all levels of government, where they have to define all these insane, complex processes because the law demands them to. And the entire process is created to protect everyday people, to protect the public, and to ensure transparency and clarity in terms of how the government makes its decisions. But those protections also get in its own way. And because there's so much complexity in today's procurement, that has actually led to even more waste and fraud, honestly, totaling hundreds of billions of dollars of wasted dollars because procurement has become so complex. It isn't about buying things anymore. It's about how to buy things. And so Hazel is tackling this at its core, building the most cutting edge state-of-the-art AI platforms in order to help procurement folks and procurement officers and government actually do the job 100 times faster. And so we're working with folks like Atlanta, Dallas, states, and also the federal government today to be able to help power their most complex processes, from writing 100-page contract documents to finding vendors in this nebulous web of different capabilities, all the way to actually evaluating their proposals. And we're creating a lot of impact today and can talk more about what we're doing, but also here to share a lot of my stories that I've learned over the last 2 years since building this from YC.
Thanks, August. I'm curious, why does government procurement resonate with you? Most people wouldn't be like, you know what I want to do? I want to help government be more efficient. You know, I want to help governments buy stuff.
Yeah. When I was a baby, no, I'm kidding. So my background, I think, is pretty obvious, and as to like why I care about the mission of what it is we're doing. Prior to building Hazel, I was at Palantir, where the entire focus of why everyone wanted to work there was because of how close you could be to the mission, whether it was in both public or actually private sector, solving the hardest problems and taking on challenges that nobody thinks should be solved because they're so either boring or so dense and complex, but instead making sure that if you chip away at it one bit by bit, you could figure it out. And so when I was there, I was supporting a lot of really mission critical efforts, such as reducing wildfire incidents in California. And so for the last few years, I hope Northern Californians have noticed that there hasn't been a major wildfire, thankfully. And
Thanks
That
to
is
you guys and the rain.
Yeah, well, also thanks to PG&E just finally making an investment into making
Yeah.
sure that their systems can respond to incidents on time. But really, the core reason of why a lot of fires happened back in the day is because wooden poles would fall over, spark a tree, and cause things from there. And these poles were like 100 years old. And so this really got me into thinking about what does this mean? Like, why weren't these poles replaced? And so that got me into thinking a whole lot of reasons for, hey, are they just ignorant? That's not the case. They're doing their best possible job out there. Like, government folks are some of the hardest working people on the planet. And so what is really getting in the way of us being safe? What is getting in the way of us not feeling like our taxpayer dollars are being wasted? Like, what's getting in the way of the greatest cities in the US becoming even greater and providing even more for its citizens? So here living in New York City, I experience a lot of things all the time. It's like trash collection being reduced, or like the library being shut down on weekends for no reason, or even like congestion pricing being a bane of everyone's existence for some reason, honestly, from like a taxpayer perspective. So when you really look into it, these outcomes and these projects and these things that affect us on a daily basis is not a budget issue. It's not a voter issue. It's not any of these things. It's super, super operational. And once you dive into it, it's all just a procurement problem. And it's impossible to sleep at night when you feel like the answer can be so clear as to how you can fix it. And you just go at it. Now, I will say solving this problem is definitely not the easiest thing in the world. But Hazel has come to a point where our theories about how government can operate in the beginning is now becoming reality. And that has been a really awesome thing to experience. And I hope a lot of other founders can experience this one day as well.
I think one thing that excites me about Hazel is, well, I don't hope that this could sound insulting, but it's actually a compliment. You're attacking a boring problem. In that's what AI is actually best at, is attacking the boring stuff that's just like dealing with mounds of data, mounds of paperwork. If we can do more, if we can leverage AI for more of that just like mind-numbing stuff, then humans can do the stuff that actually is not robotic, that is more creative and more involves more judgment and human discernment.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. LLMs are first and foremost just really good at context and decision problems, right? When you have to synthesize a ton of information, when you have to find a diamond in the rough for a piece of evidence to support your claims to do something, that is something that LLMs are incredibly efficient and cheap at doing compared to a human. And so we've seen a lot of these industries, insurance, legal, banking, very similar to like, I guess, the mind numbing effect that you were talking about when it comes to procurement being really good use cases. And so procurement itself can represent a lot of things, right? It can represent the finance part, it can represent the decision part. What we're concerned about in the beginning is, as you said, the most boring parts. Don't worry about offending me. I've heard way worse. The part of that we're tackling is the things that they're actually spending too many hours on, that the humans of the job can't even get to the actual interesting analysis or the human part, as you said. There's one person right now in a specific city agency close to you that is running 1,000 procurement actions by themselves every single year. And so if your job, let's say, even if you're working every single day of the year and averaging 2 to 3 procurement decisions a day, that's not actually possible. And how can you expect yourself to be able to make the best possible decisions and the most human decision to best support your city? So what we're seeing today, Hazel, is finally we're taking away hours and hours of manual document work, manual search work, manual reporting work. And if you replace just those 3 functions alone, now they're asking us for new features, for negotiations, for analysis, for research that is like incredibly more dynamic, more human, and obviously just like much more complex thing that requires human in the loop decision makers. And we're starting to see this open up the market again too, and making the government procurement market bigger and more dynamic for folks on the commercial side. So that has been a very exciting turn of events for us. And really showcases the power of AI, which is not to replace humans, but also to open up to more folks in the industry.
That's great. And that kind of leads to the next question is, what's a big win that you guys have experienced at Hazel over the last year that you're really proud of?
I would say when we are building our product, it's very hard to get lost in the sauce, for lack of a better phrase, and thinking that all you do is think all day. I'm writing an RFP or a document to do landscaping and really boring stuff. But now that we've rolled out to every city agency in Dallas and we have dozens of users in Atlanta and we're seeing what they're actually buying for the first time. And when I go back and I look at the records and I'm saying, hey, as an admin, what are you working on right now? They're buying housing. They're buying infrastructure. They're buying for the World Cup. And to know that my platform is doing real world work that applies to the things that we care about on a daily basis, things that are actually incredibly political, but incredibly needed, and things that are incredibly important to our social fabric, because this is what government is doing for us. And I'm seeing how our platform is effectively at the center of all of that now. Has been an awesome game-changing experience for us. And again, turning a lot of our theories back in the day into reality, because we didn't experience any of this for over a year. I mean, kind of tying this back to my founder journey, we were just telling everybody what the promise of our platform can do for so long. And that is a very jarring and lonely experience, to always have to feel like you're almost duping your customers and talking about promises instead of reality. But now that we're transitioning over, because we have real use cases, we have real usage, and to be able to communicate what the reality is now of what our platform is doing is just such a different, wildly different experience. And it's something that I want to continuously chase after day after day after day now.
So can you give us a microscopic view of one, without naming any names? I don't want to cause any NDA problems, but one particular city doing one particular procurement action and how Hazel made that faster, cheaper, better, however you describe the value.
Certainly. So, I mean, this is a pretty common use case where a major city has to run a major airport. And, you know, it was crazy when they brought it up to us, because we said, what do we know about airports? And what eventually happened was we didn't even realize that our platform could do such a critically good job at what it is they were looking for. But what they're able to do was essentially show us that they used to be building these 50, 60, 70 page RFPs to describe how they wanted a vendor to do massive infrastructure work at their major local airport. And it was so deeply technical that I thought, oh man, like, I don't want to make a mistake. Maybe we should try and transition them off of this to make sure that they have the right folks in it. Like, maybe we're not ready for game time. What ended up happening was we actually built all of the right features so that we didn't have to be the experts. We just had to make sure that their departments, their engineers, and all their folks were sitting in the right place, because their departments were the ones that knew all the technical details. Actually, no one should be able to replace engineers like that. And the procurement team was the expert in how to buy anything and like what the boundaries around buying anything should look like. And so finally, they had this environment to collaborate in one place where AI was sort of not even needed. And that's how we realized we had built the best product, not necessarily the best AI product, but the best product to allow government to collaborate on a very specific, such a highly technical RFP that would have taken them literally months to complete. But now this infrastructure project, you know, when we think about the reconstruction of JFK Terminal 1 or the renovation of SFO or like any of these major airports, like things we have to use on a daily basis, that could have taken them over a year to start. But now they're going to start immediately because they have all the right details in place, and they're going to get the right vendors in place because the vendors understand exactly what the government is now asking them for. Seeing that in action and seeing them be able to deliberately go piece by piece in lightning speed and collaborate against one system to be able to get the final result out the door. Now, I don't know if this is the specificity that you wanted, but the product itself is able to actually like dictate, hey, we need XYZ types of cables for this airport. They might have actually left that out for some reason because it's just there's just too many details to manage. And so I was very proud to see them working through that really quickly. It also even inspired us to make sure that like, hey, they were like, hey, why can't your platform read an airport schematic? And I thought, oh, we'll do that another day, I guess. But either way, it's been a pretty cool journey. And I would say seeing our platform and product in action finally doing that has been really incredible.
Great. Thank you. One thing we like to say here a lot is wisdom is failure redeemed. Another way we describe it is most of the best things we learned the hard way. So what can you give us an example of something you learned the hard way, some wisdom that you have earned in the School of Founder Hard Knocks?
Oh man, there's too many. We've made so many mistakes. And as I told you, we didn't get any success for nearly a year and a half before we secured our first win, which was with the city of Dallas. One of the funniest stories when we first started building off Hazel, and we were on our first conversation ever with a government official. And I brought my confidence over from Palantir. I had sold a ton of stuff when I was there to different folks, meeting with C-suites all across the world. And I thought, man, I have the charm and the capability to describe what we're doing clearly. Let's do that. And my co-founder, well, his name is Elton. He is from BCG, did defense acquisitions, is the utmost expert in everything. So together, we were truly a great team that was able to deliver really great results. And we've done so at our past jobs. But when we talked to a government official for the first time, we realized that none of that carried over into government sales. None of that was us understanding exactly what it was going to take to get a government official to take us to the next level and help us understand what to do next. And so that was a very painful lesson that we learned step by step, where government officials don't care about helping you, right? They have people that they need to serve. And so how do you break into their consciousness about the top 3 things that they can care about on any given day? And to be honest, this is applicable to everybody in any industry ever. Learning how to sell to your specific sector and what it is they care about is just so wildly difficult that whatever playbook you had for the past is probably not going to work for the future. And so when we walked out of that room, my co-founder and I thought we crushed it with the government official. We thought we absolutely convinced that person to buy our software and to deploy it for their massive $1 billion budget. What turned out happening is that we got back channel from one of our folks that said, that person thought that you guys are not ready for prime time. And that crushed us. So for months, we were trying to figure it out. We never really got the chance again to speak with the top official until probably like months later. And then we really reevaluated our strategy to get there to the top. And we had a sales playbook afterwards. And we really understood how to talk to the person across from us. And then that unlocked everything. And I think lesson in sales, lesson in sector specific sales, lesson in government sales specifically for us, and just took a really long time and just made so many mistakes along the way. But once you got it, it kind of clicks. So that's been good.
Can you give us, let's double click on that. Can you give us one example of one thing that you changed and how you even knew that was the thing that needed to change?
I mean, we are pretty good about troubleshooting why we don't get something. So we expect success. And so when we don't get it, we just troubleshoot it really quickly. My co-founder and I have talked to professors, previous government operators, our YC group partners, and we would give them the pitch and practice exactly how we did it and tell them what happened, what did this. And they said, oh, yeah, no, it's pretty obvious why they don't care about X, Y, and Z, or something like that. And so I think after a few reps, being able to talk to a high-level government official was actually pretty difficult. It is actually also absolutely crucial that you do so in government sales as the first step, in my opinion. So for us, our ability in order to, I think, get those reps in and figure out what we did wrong just came in many different forms and like shapes and forms and stuff. So for instance, another example was I would get to talking with a government official, and no matter how interested they say they are in your product, you never explain product because it is just going to go way over their heads probably. And also, I know that when I start talking about technical things, I may have been an academic in a different life. I will nerd out way too hard and over explain everything. And that is absolutely something to avoid when you're doing sales. You always just make sure that you get to the thing that you want to get across. It's I guess at YC we call it your vertebrae, whether it's for fundraising or for sales. You know you're coming in with a very specific thing that you want to get across, and you want your stakeholder to walk away with that exact thing so that they can make the decisions that's best for you. Yeah. And so not over explaining product was like one of the also the most difficult lessons I had to learn at a certain point. Man, what are some other good examples? Oh, so many.
Well, I think let me just riff on that just a minute.
Sure.
Because I think this is something a lot of founders struggle with, including us. Like this is something we have struggled with in explaining our value proposition is we get really excited. Founders get really excited about explaining what we do. This is the magic. this is how we make it happen. And people don't care. Nobody cares how you make the magic happen. They only care how you fix their problem, what problem you fix. And so it's so hard to just talk about this is the value you get and not do the stuff that we work so hard to learn how to do. Is that kind of what you're describing?
Exactly. I mean, I used to describe why GPT was good for one thing versus cloud was good for another thing, and take 5 minutes of their time to explain why LLMs are so good at stuff. When in reality, one, government was actually pretty anti-AI when we first started, or they were very hesitant rather. Like they weren't against it, they were just like very hesitant about deploying AI. And I used to describe how really interesting UI quirks that we have were because of really interesting decisions that we made. But none of that matters. You only get 30 minutes with the person across from you. And if you spend 10 minutes explaining these cool details instead of using that 10 minutes to sympathize with their problems, show them what the future could look like even beyond your current platform, because your current platform probably doesn't solve all their problems, and also discuss business, right, to make it super efficient, then that's time actually wasted. And so, yeah, making sure that you use your time correctly and just making sure that you're telling them what they want to hear sounds more obvious than it is, but it's really important.
Well, it really comes down to empathy. And I think we all kind of struggle with that in some ways, but it's understanding what they care about.
Certainly. I agree with that.
What do you think these days, what's one of the biggest challenges you're trying to solve?
Do you mean the Hazel side or the government side?
Within thinking about Hazel and what's a problem you're trying to solve within Hazel?
Yeah, we have one of those classic problems today where there is simply too much to do. All these governments, right? I mean, it's not a sector worth tackling or a market worth tackling if there isn't a long trail product ideas that we're going to have for the future that's going to fix, essentially, hopefully, a lot of inefficiencies in government. So for us, we had a long period of time where all we did was say, hey, I have this sales call and they say their problem is this. I think we should create a demo that does X, Y, and Z. And my engineers would riot and they would say, hey, like this is terrible, blah, 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 whatever. And then sometimes my engineers would come back to me and said, hey, I saw our user doing this. I want to build this really niche feature for like 2 more weeks so that they can have a really great experience doing X, Y, and Z. And so there's this balance between creating really, really good products that can maybe almost overserve your users versus making sure that you have enough product out there to showcase that you're thinking critically about your user problems and what it is you're doing. And instead of saying that, one of us is right, one of us is wrong, I would say we're always wrong all the time until you reach PMF, more or less. And so what we've decided that we would do to fix this problem is we have dedicated Mondays morning sessions where over the weekend, I'm not saying I force my employees to work up the weekend. They can use that time if they want to. But what we do is that we come in with 2 to 3 ideas about what we think we should be building for our customers. And between me, the founders, and the engineering team and our biz dev team, we're pretty equally divided. And so we bring perspectives from both sides. And because we're independently coming up with ideas, this session is critically important to see if the team is aligned on building the thing that we want to build together. And so if let's say I have an idea and my idea A gets repeated by my co-founder and it gets repeated by an engineer, then likely that'll be a feature that we have to prioritize for that week. And that has really helped us shape our focus along the way. And it has actually almost sharpened our focus and listening to customers as to what it is they need. And so now we have a really strong product roadmap over the next few months. This is, of course, still a skill and development for us because it's crazy that I still want to get to everything as quickly as possible. But the growing pains of building a good company, hopefully, is exactly like that. And we'll get to that eventually once we grow the company a little larger. However, this is just one of those classic issues that I know people face all the time. And being able to prioritize and focus on building the right thing is just so incredibly difficult, but it's something that we at Hazel have to face all the time, and it's hopefully something that we're solving today in a very good way.
That's a great example. Thank you. As you think back over the last couple of years with Hazel, how have you evolved as a leader? And then I guess the follow-up question I'll give you right from the start is, how do you think you still need to evolve? Like, what's your growing edge? So sort of a 2-part. How have you changed and what change is still coming?
That's a really great question. And I'm going to try to be as introspective about this as possible. When I was going into Hazel, I think when you're so small, it's really difficult to classify I guess, yourself as a CEO, because everyone, in my opinion, should be owning very specific slices. And I never view my job as a leader to micromanage folks, tell folks what to do. I would rather instead that we all agree on what it is we need to do as a team. And then like a team project, move the ship forward. I would say, I guess, as CEO, the things that I expect myself to be able to do is anything outwardly facing. I mean, I'm pretty extroverted. I would like to say that I'm good at public speaking as well. So my ability to take on those roles and to make sure that all the intangibles of the company are settled was like one thing that really also drove me to want to become a startup co-founder and also CEO of my company, right? And so that has been pretty much my, I guess, leadership personality for quite a while. I would say my inflection point as to when I started thinking about what leadership meant for my company, probably around 4 to 5 employees. Now we're at 6 employees large, is what is my core identity? How can I create some semblance of predictability, I would say, from me to the rest of the team as to what I expect, as to what they can come to me for, and as to how I'm driving the company forward as well and communicating. And so it's very difficult when I'm stuck in my own world, actually doing all of these intangibles, but I'm still going back to them and telling them about stuff that I see on a daily basis. And that is very hard mentally for the rest of my team to follow. And so it really comes down to whether or not I was communicating correctly. And it came down to whether or not I was even synthesizing information correctly. So the tiny adjustments that I've had to make certainly was being able to journal every single day and every weekend about where the company priorities were. What does my team need from me? How exactly am I pushing this company forward on a weekly basis? Because my job is also to inspire. And so being able to journal that has actually also transformed me into a much more efficient communicator. I used to maybe drag on weekly meetings, rambling about my daily stressors or thinking about which like of 5 directions we can go as a company. But now on Mondays, we actually just have like 15-minute meetings to talk about exactly what's happening that week. It's just me speaking actually, but we keep it efficient just to say, hey, if we accomplish this week, we're really good to go for this big project, or this really sets me up to succeed in fundraising, or this is going to really help us close out deals at this conference. So I've seen that become one of the biggest jobs that people don't talk about enough that you need to do as a leader. And at first felt really awkward, but now feels really good because people respond to it correctly. And I guess I'm the kind of person that requires that validation from my employees, but once I figure it out, it felt really good.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Do you have any sense of the area where you still need to grow, or the next edge for you?
Always. I would say a good reason that I brought my co-founder on is we're a good pairing match in terms of how we like to execute. I certainly would have loved to become a more organized person, for instance. My co-founder is the much more organized one. And so between the two of us, we're always telling each other every 2 weeks. We have bi-weekly feedback sessions for each other where we let each other know, hey, I know how to take this on, but if you wanted to grow in this space, I'm good at this, but you can also be good at this, right? Like, hey, August, remember to check off your Asana cards, please, because you're in charge of executing on pieces too. And so make sure that the rest of the team feels safe, that you're executing on your tasks without having to just force me to do it, for instance. And so those are the pieces that we tell each other all the time. I'm constantly trying to update my communication skills. We at this company actually have a nearly no filler word tolerance policy. And so being able to lead by example, making sure I'm talking about the work and the company and our prospects in the right way and not using filler words as much as possible is
Not
something I'm
using
always
what
trying to
words?
words. Filler words. Like
Filler words, like
those, likes, etc. I've definitely made plenty of mistakes on this podcast, but always trying to grow there. And
Sure.
I would say the last thing that I'm working on is a general sense of passion every single day. This is all I think about. And to be able to keep up and inspire and making sure that we're still aligned on the same mission every single day is something no one's really asking me for, but it's something that I do for myself so that I know that everyone else around me knows that we're still in this together for the long haul. And this is going to be a long project, and this is all one big marathon for us. So we're going to keep moving forward.
How do you maintain your passion without burning out?
Great question. My personality, not to make it sound like I was born to be a founder, but I definitely can get really invested in whatever it is I'm working on. And I specifically chose this from the beginning because knew I could feel very passionate about a platform that helps government, affects daily people, changes the way that we in the US live our lives. And the fact that it's a big market and with my massive revenue opportunity, obviously, but more of the former and thinking about that on a daily basis. I do think on the topic of burnout, though, that one's really important. We have a very important culture here at Hazel where we understand that you can't be doing work every single day of the week, every hour of every day. We see what has happened actually when we do work ourselves too hard, and compounding that with no success actually for a few months has led to really stressful times and really stressful conversations that didn't actually have a place at the company. And it was only there because we were starting to experience some burnout and a lack of ability to see things with a clear vision. We're constantly encouraging each other to work out. Fitness is very important. We're constantly encouraging each other to take breaks. I would say that we probably suggest at least a week of time off every single quarter. And so we keep to that pretty strictly. We also do make sure that there are things to chase towards all the time, right? Do you have to work on the weekends? No. But as a team, we've actually fallen into this position where because we give ourselves great mandates, our customers give us clear direction. And then we ourselves give each other clear direction as to like, if we accomplish this, what does this unlock? And we see ourselves just being able to get these things done on the timeline that we're able to get them done. And so you don't really even think about the timelines or the weekends or anything like that once you set that clear vision. And so burnout doesn't really happen if that occurs. So also something that I'm always trying to work on is making sure that doesn't happen, because if I'm able to set a clear vision for everyone on my team as to what the clear objectives are every step of the way, then people don't actually feel as burnt out as they should be usually. So always something to work on there.
Thank you for sharing. Burnout's a topic we talk about a lot. It's such a constant risk for founders and for startup teams. So if there's somebody out there listening to this and they think, I would love for my government agency, local, county, state, whatever, to be more efficient, how can they make effective intros for you and for Hazel?
Thanks for teeing it up. Well, please come find me on LinkedIn. My full name is August Sun-Chen. You can find me at August S. Chen in the LinkedIn header above, or just visit our website. Our website is hazelai.com. And at the bottom, you can find time with me for a free demo or just a nice conversation with me to talk about the future of government.
Cool. That's all for the official podcast today, folks. I'm so glad to have August on, and I take some notes about being intentional about how you work with your team and keep the team healthy. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.